Hello you all, I'm here to show a quick video about what you'll have to disassemble, at least the steps I took to get in a new catalytic converter into a Fiat 500. This edition is Gucci, it's a 2012. Hope this video helped. I couldn't really find any resource, so hopefully this resource will be useful to you if you have this model or something similar. Jack the vehicle up. As you can tell, have plenty of clearance for you to get underneath with a mat. For those doing it at home, be certain you use a jack stand for additional safety purposes. Don't want anyone having crushed aftermath trying to fix their vehicle and saving some maintenance cost. After you got the vehicle situated and safe, another recommendation for safety, make sure you have some kind of chalk to chalk the wheels whenever you jack it up. That way it doesn't roll. And make sure your emergency brakes are on, especially if your car is front wheel drive and the emergency brakes are the rear. We open up the hood here, and first thing we're going to take off is this faceplate on top of the engine. So this just has 4 pop-in points where you don't need any special tool to remove, just to lift up with your arm, your hand. I've already loosened mine, so it's just gonna come right off. So this is the faceplate. I'm gonna flip it around here. Turn it around so you guys know what I'm talking about when I say 4 pop pins. You got one here, here, and here. And these pins correlate to the part that it come off of, here, here, there, and here. Next, you're going to want to take off the mass airflow casing and filter. So to begin with that, you have this hose here that hooks up to this part. This hose is very easy to pull off. It's rubber. You can pull that off. Once you get that pulled off, you've got 1, 2, 3 screws about this big. They're 8mm, or you can use either flat or Phillips screwdriver. So once you remove these 3 of this screw, the cover should come right off, and the filter with it. We'll move that to the side. Make sure to loosen the 2 bolts on the side here whenever you're taking off this front case. The next part you're going to take off is going to be a plastic housing that has the intake, it looks like, for the air. So you've got 2 places that you're going to have to disconnect. One is this big hose. It's in the bottom right here. I've already got it disconnected, but it's pretty much a flathead screwdriver or an 8mm socket. So once you have that removed, the hose will just slide off of this metal housing. The next hose that you'll want to remove is this little one that actually connects to a different part aside from this plastic part. Here's the part where it's hooked up in, so it just pulls straight off. There was no metal connector or anything. There's the hose itself. On this end, there was no metal strap or connector, so it just slides right on top of there. Now, once you got this loosened from the engine itself, I've already got it loose, so in this video it's going to be very easy looking, but in the very back, in the center, maybe almost directionally under this engraving, there's a rubber piece, just like the little poppets that we pulled out on the very first face. It's back there. Mine was a little tough, and when I pulled it out, it took some effort, but once you get that off, we're going to put that over here. This is more or less just going to give you more clearance whenever you try to start working with the catalytic converter exhaust manifold. Here's that spot where it's going to be popped on. The rubber is going to be popped onto this, so that's where it's going to be hard to remove. So you got the heat shield here. You've got 2 bolts here and here. That's going to be about that big. with the 10mm head is the O2 sensor. It goes right in this position. So once you pull that out, once you remove the O2 sensor, you're gonna notice there's a bolt right here. That bolt is a 10mm. It's about that long. So once you get that removed, we can go underneath the car. So underneath the car, you're gonna have this bolt that's going to be in your heat shield. That bolt has a nut on it. It looks like this, and it is a 12mm. Once you get that bolt removed, all right, here's where the downstream O2 sensor goes. It was in here, and I didn't really have enough room to use my O2 sensor socket, so I use a 22mm wrench, and it came out nicely. So now, all right, let's try to get this heat shield wedged out of here. Not too challenging. It should come right out once you have all 4 bolts out. There's 1, 2, 1 there, and then the one on this side. All right, now we can see our exhaust manifold, and right underneath it, the catalytic converter. So the process I took to remove this was I looked at the part I received and checked out what all was holding this puppy on. And then I'll show you a little trick that I did to help maneuver it where I didn't have to pull a lot of the stuff out, like the radiator and the whole front end, just to get the part to maneuver out. Here's the part I'll be replacing, and I'm just checking it to see all the connections it has, so I make sure I disconnect everything that's holding it onto the engine. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on top, 1, 2, 3, 4 on bottom. That's where the O2 sensor went. And then there's where the downstream O2 sensor went. And then we've got the part that connects to the exhaust flex hose. All right, so just to look at these pieces, I've got these 5 already removed, and the bottom 4 already removed. They are nuts that hold against the engine. These nuts are 13mm, all except for one. The bottom right on this left side was a 12mm for whatever reason. Looks like there's an extra bracket here where a bolt can go into the bottom of the transmission. Make sure to remove that or unhook it from the exhaust. So this has got a little flex hose there, and these are the bolts that was in there. They're 12mm. They've got a nut on one end, and there's a little metal gasket that was in between the 2 components there. Now once we got that unhooked, the catalytic converter part in its entirety should now be unhooked from the car. You see this long bar here? This bar was underneath the car, and I believe it's helped it stabilize whenever there's a lot of movement. So it was hooked up right here to the other opposite end of the car, and it went right underneath our exhaust here. So I think that was hindering me a lot when I tried to maneuver the exhaust out, and pull out the catalytic converter with it. I did go ahead and remove that. Those bolts are 19 millimeter. There's 4, 2 on each side. And I just laid the stabilizer bar right there. And now I've got some free movement. All right, so taking this off was a little bit of a challenge because your fan here, this right here, is a bully when it comes to trying to get this around it. It does flex a little bit. Be careful not to break anything, especially regarding your fan, because you'll have to replace it later, which includes taking out the radiator, as I found out. But I was able to disconnect the fan and maneuver it around just enough to get the manifold out. So I'm going to show you where those disconnects are. All right, coming from the front of the engine, if you're going to do like I did and remove the fan support, or you can maneuver the fan around, come in, and to the left you see there's one 8 millimeter bolt. Then the exact opposite side below the intake hose, there's another bolt. It's kind of hidden underneath the big hose there and some of the electrical wiring. So in order to take the electrical wiring off, each one of them has a little bit of a different gain to them. And also the electrical harness here, it's plugged right beside the bolt. So if you see my finger, that's where the bolt's at. I do recommend unplugging all the electricals first before getting into that bolt, because when you start moving the fan around, you really don't want these electricals to be stressed and maybe pull loose. So you got 3 electricals. This very top one here, this is the method to remove the electricals, is it comes down, the body comes down. So like that. And then whenever you want to replace it, the body goes back up. Like that. The next one is this yellow right here. It pulls back, and then that loosens the connection and you can pull it out. And there's one way down here at the bottom. You can see the yellow there. That one works the exact same way as the blue connection. You pull the yellow back, that releases the connection, and then you can pull the cable apart. This one's actually on a groove, the electrical connection, it goes to the fan. So if that groove comes out, don't worry, there's a little slide on the back of the electrical connection that's attached to the fan that it will slide back onto, and you can slide it back onto there and then plug it in. So that's bolt that I was talking about, that's underneath the wiring harness. It's 8 millimeter as well. Once you do that, the fan will have some play in it. So this fan you can move up to release it from its grounding support, and then you'll have a little play. You can move it side to side just slightly enough to try to get this knot all the way through the bottom. So successfully I was able to do that. I got the old one here. It's much easier putting the new one in, plus I had assistance, so if you can grab somebody to help you navigate, one of you on the bottom and one of you up here guiding. And like I said, the fan does have a little give to it. There was parts in here, like right here, where that knot contacts the most. It was able to give, flexed a little bit without breaking. And then you slide that component back up in there. And now I'm gonna do the honor of putting everything back together. All right, I'm gonna reattach the exhaust to the flex hose. So I'm gonna start with this gasket and then put these bolts in. You may need an extra long extension, with your ratchet. Make sure you dodge some of those big bulky parts in your way. All right, so I got this buttoned up nicely. I tried to find torque spec. It says 41 foot-pound, but I snapped a bolt trying that on one side. So I tightened them up a little less than 41 foot-pound. Be cautious of what you do. If you tighten it up and it's not enough and you hear an exhaust leak, just try it again. Buttoned up the bracket there. I got the heat shield on, and at the top, I don't have the heat shield buttoned down though. I did tighten these down. It says 11 foot-pound. I did a little less than that in case my tool is not reading properly or something, because I think that's why I might have snapped at the bottom. There's 4 bolts underneath, 5 bolts on top. Tighten them down to spec. Just be careful that if you break a bolt here, it's going to be a lot more tedious to get that replaced than it was for my exhaust. Underneath the car, I put this stabilizer bar. I think it's actually called a crossbar link. So it goes right underneath your exhaust. From passenger side to driver side, there's 4 bolts. I torqued them down to the spec. The spec that I read on mine is 55, so just be mindful when you're torquing these down. Don't over torque or you'll break your bolt like I did on my exhaust. Alright, they're buttoning up the bolts on top of the heat shield. Remember, there's a bolt right underneath the O2 sensor location, so it's right. Here's the bolt area. O2 sensor goes here. Just some advice here, if you're having trouble getting that bolt in that's below the O2 sensor on the upstream, loosen these top 2 bolts and pull up your heat shield, because it looks like it's just misaligned by a little bit. So once you get that settled in, then you can tighten down the top 2 bolts again. Installed the O2 sensor, rewired it just for kicks. That's underneath the battery if you're planning to do the same. It's that cable right there, where the yellow and blue wires are. All right, here's where the downstream O2 sensor goes. It was in here. And I didn't really have enough room to use my O2 sensor socket, so I use a 22mm wrench. Alright, I got that bolt in on the heat shield. That's the last part on the heat shield I needed. Going back up top to finish. Alright, now I'm going to put back this hose, tighten it up, put back that hose. And then tighten up these 2 bolts. Going to put back in the air filter and the mass airflow housing. You have this hose here that hooks up to this part. This hose is very easy to, you've got 1, 2, 3 screws about this big. They're 8mm, or you can use either flat or Phillips screwdriver. All right, with the mass airflow back in, now I'm going to put in the top casing. Just going to line it up all nice and neat on top of the oil stick and engine oil. And it should pop right in with those little poppers. And it feels snug, snug. So job finished. Enjoy.